Hi, this is Tara McGillicuddy, host of ADHD Support Talk Radio. And this is an episode of ADHD Support Talk Radio which originally aired in October of 2012 called Out of Control, Spinning, and Scattered with ADHD. And it is with Laurie Dupar. This is one of the most popular podcast episodes of ADHD Support Talk Radio, so I wanted to share it with you. So have a listen and be sure to subscribe to both ADHD Support Talk Radio on iTunes and to my channel on YouTube. Thanks so much for listening and watching.
Hello and welcome to ADHD Support Talk Radio. My name is Tara McGillicuddy and I am the host of ADHD Support Talk Radio. I am an ADHD coach and I am also the founder and director of ADDclasses.com. And at ADDclasses.com, we provide virtual support and education to people affected by ADHD. If you would like to learn more about ADDclasses.com, you can go to the website www.addclasses.com. And today I have with me Laurie Dupar. And Laurie, I'd like to welcome you back to ADHD Support Talk Radio. I know you've been on before.
Thanks, Tara.
And today Laurie and I are going to be talking about feeling out of control, spinning, and scattered when you have ADHD. And, you know, when you have ADHD and you're trying to run a business or thinking of running a business. So welcome back, Laurie. And before we get started, can you let who you are in relationship to helping people affected by ADD and ADHD?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
How they can get in touch with you after the show.
Okay, great. Sorry, Tara, cut you off there. As you know, Tara, I've been an ADHD coach for about the past 9 years, and like a lot of ADHD coaches, that really started because my own son had been diagnosed a few years before that. But my background is actually as a nurse and as a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. So that was where my training was, and I've taken those skills and that education and that experience and really brought it over into the ADHD coaching because I really recognize that the approach of coaching is really unique, and it made such a huge difference on myself and my son when he was struggling with some of those ADHD challenges that I pretty much devoted my life to doing it. And I work with people literally of all ages, and I really specialize in working with people when they're just freshly diagnosed, again, being able to apply some of that background, understanding neurobiology of the brain, and also helping people sort of sort through what some of their medication choices might be. That's an area of specialty that I have as well.
Well, thank you. And if people would like to get in touch with you after the show, how can they do that, Laurie?
Oh, thanks. They can go to my website. It's www.coachingforadhd.com, and that's all spelled out. Or they can email me personally. I always love to get an email, and that's Laurie, Laurie, at coachingforadhd.com. Either way is great.
Thanks. And I love to have you on my show. I know you've done classes at ADD Classes. You have a really impressive background when it comes to ADHD, and you also really understand ADHDs and offer some great resources. So thank you so much for returning, Laurie. Yes, we were going back and forth about, what to talk about when you came on the show, and you mentioned talking about the entrepreneurial brain style and, people feeling scattered and overwhelmed and out of control and spinning. And I thought, people are going to relate to this. I mean, especially those who are running a business or thinking of running their own business, but I think just the average person with ADHD definitely can relate to these feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur or running your own business to feel scattered and overwhelmed. But especially what I've noticed in my work in the last 9 years, Tara, working with individuals, is that there's so many common characteristics, or let me put it this way, there's a 300% more likelihood that people with ADHD are going to be entrepreneurs. And at the same time so this is just it's a job style or a lifestyle that is very, very attractive for people with ADHD. And unfortunately, sometimes along with those innate talents and skills and interests and passions and desire to change the world that a lot of entrepreneurs have, we're also have some of that, what I call sort of that flip side, or those pitfalls, where they still are struggling with that spinning or that overwhelm, not knowing what to do with too many ideas or being distracted. They may even get, it's not uncommon for me to talk with people who are just bored with what they're doing, or there's details of being an entrepreneur that they just put off because it's not the most interesting part of their job. So unfortunately, despite the fact that a lot of people with ADHD are really well suited to a job of an entrepreneur, they oftentimes may not succeed because they're not looking at some of these other areas where they have challenges in, and that's sort of undermining their ability to actually be successful in their business.
Yeah, and I know I can definitely relate to that as a person with ADHD who's an entrepreneur, has my own business, and I have great ideas. I'm very creative, but I get stuck and overwhelmed and am spinning on like the minor administrative details or making a decision, or I'm telling you, not being able to find something like a pen. That can like really ruin my whole day. It's like we have these great strengths and ideas, and a lot of us are suited to be entrepreneurs. It comes naturally. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we can really, get stuck when ADHD or other challenges, come into play.
Yeah. Well, I really say that, and again, I considering my background, focusing and working on entrepreneurs, so not actually something that I thought I would be moving into, but it's really, really interesting. Again, I'm all about looking at all the different aspects that are involved when it comes to ADHD. But what I really believe is that people are, just like we're born with ADHD, and some people are able to compensate in different ways and may not be diagnosed until they're older, we're really born as entrepreneurs. And some people may think, oh, I've had a business for 2 years, so I've just been an entrepreneur for 2 years. But in fact, when you look at the characteristics over and over again of what an entrepreneur is, these are qualities that we've had through our whole lives, and they're very similar to those positive qualities of ADHD. It's what makes us really good at being an entrepreneur. Having a lot of ideas makes us be able to see maybe possibilities or solutions or products that other people don't see or put together. Willing to take a risk, we say sometimes that's very common with ADHD. Well, a lot of entrepreneurs are sort of willing to take that risk to try a new business or put, their money in a new business and take the risk that it's going to succeed. They're very innovative, very determined, right? When we get set on something with ADHD, entrepreneurs are the same. They're almost like a dog with a bone. They're not going to let it go. Really passionate about what we do. So if you look back, for most entrepreneurs, it's not when you started actually maybe technically, hanging out your shingle, so to speak, but you've actually been an entrepreneur all your life. And part of that is because of what I call your entrepreneurial brain style, which is very, very similar to the ADHD brain style.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, it probably started in preschool when you were doing things differently than the rest of the class, and you were trying to outsmart everyone and find your own way to do things.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes it comes out subtly when you may be, you find that bit of your rebel, or you notice that you can solve a problem in a particular way. Actually, a funny story about one of the somebody I know who is an entrepreneur and has more of an ADHD brain style and entrepreneur brain style was telling me, oh yeah, I remember in preschool sounds sort of funny, but remember that white glue that we had and to fill up the little bottles of white glue. You may not, you may be a little younger than me, but you had, the Elmer's glue, and then you had the big bottle to fill it up. She for some reason, how that smelled, and kids were we were sort of obsessed with the smell of that. She was somehow had gotten to the storage locker of the big bottle and was, selling 25 cents a handful or something of this Elmer's glue to kids.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Who does that? Yeah.
Yeah, who understands the value of money at that age, let alone, having that, entrepreneurial brain style. And,
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's creative. We sort of laugh at it now, but when you're an entrepreneur, you can say, dang, that was pretty smart. You mean, people would pay 25 cents for a handful of glue? And you're like, who would have thought of that? Someone with that very creative, out-of-the-box thinking. And again, entrepreneurs, just as we know, is not just about making money, but there's something about making a difference or somehow doing something different. So that's what I think this particular person was doing. Plus, she said she wanted a little extra money in her pocket. Didn't hurt. So
Oh, it's funny, yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember having that, style and wanting to do things differently. I think I was like 10 or 11, and I've always been, for lack of a better word, a slob. One of the big things I fought with my parents over growing up was cleaning my room. Like, I'd be put in my room and told not to come out until it was clean. And it's funny, I lived in a neighborhood where, we had lots of kids, and one of the days my mother got fed up with me, and I had a younger sister too, so we had kids in the house, and like, okay, my mother said not to come out of my room till it was clean, and I had one of the neighborhood kids clean my room and told him he could keep all the money that he found on the floor, and I think he ended up finding like, $15, and for a 10-year-old, that was a lot of money.
Oh,
and
for
I was
goodness sake.
creative, and I found a solution, and I was delegating at 10 and 11 years old, and
exactly.
Of course, my mother, he ended up going home with all this money, and his mother got upset because thought he like stole it from somebody, and it's like, no, Tara gave it to me to clean her room, and of course called my mother, and she was so embarrassed that I did that, but here I was, being, innovative, entrepreneurial, realizing, okay, cleaning my room isn't one of my strengths. I delegated to someone else. So, it's really interesting. Of course, I also got negative feedback from my parents on that, and my mother was very clear, okay, go up to your room and clean it yourself. Don't come out. So, it was, if I found... I was very good at solving problems, you know, and, I built that into, a business later on in life. But I think that can also be one of the issues, if you have that entrepreneurial brain style at a young age, getting that negative feedback. It's hard to turn it into something later on in life. And in addition, you have just the ADD issues of being scattered or unfocused and, all those issues, but the self-esteem and the negative feedback you've gotten growing up or even as adults can really get you stuck too.
Yeah, and this is where I say it's incredibly similar to having ADHD. In fact, there's a huge overlap between this of what I call the entrepreneurial brain style and the ADHD brain style. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about it, and it has to do with how we're supposed to do things. Sort of like you said, your mom was like, clean your room. You're like, well, okay, it's clean. I did what I was supposed to, or what it was supposed to do, and I did it in a very creative way. And you, as we both know, sometimes that's also the challenge with people with ADHD. They're very creative in how they do it. There's just sort of a judgment, well, that's not how you're supposed to do it. And you and I both know from being coaches, oftentimes we're saying, you know what, you're going to do it differently, and good for you because that's how you work best.
Yes.
Yeah. It's really true. There's a lot of judgment for that, but as you get to be an adult, we also know this about ADHD kids, is that there's a lot of really positive qualities, not so bad to be strong-minded and be creative and know how to be able to delegate, like you said, or actually be a natural leader. Those are qualities that we want in our adults in this day and age. But it's funny, you're right. Sometimes we tend to look down on it, and kids really struggle because it's not what they're supposed to be.
Yeah, and I mean that's what's great about being involved, working with an ADHD coach, or just being involved in a group with other ADHD people, feeling that acceptance and saying, okay, it's okay to think different. Not only is it okay to think different, it's a strength to think differently and to have your ideas and to, a lot of times, change the world by your ideas and creations.
Yes. And again, it's an ADHD quality. We know when we meet with someone, they can get hyper-focused about something. They're completely passionate about it. And that is what an entrepreneur is doing as well. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, who best describes the out-of-the-box thinker, if it's ADHD or entrepreneurs, because it both fits so well, right? And there is that passion to do something to change the world, to make a difference, and we all do that differently. But once we sort of find out what that is, like I said, there's this perseverance and this ability to get it done if it's the right thing, right? Or if it's the thing that fits for us, to the extent of all others.
And just for people, I know we're all the way into discussing, but some people may never have heard the term entrepreneur or aren't very familiar with it. What would you say is like a standard definition, or how would you just describe an entrepreneur for people?
Well, I love this because actually, as I said, well, I didn't tell you this, but when I was in school, it took me a while because I definitely have ADHD characteristics and an entrepreneurial brain style. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I basically tried all different sorts of undergraduate courses to try and see what was my best fit. And actually, nursing was sort of the last thing I tried, but it really spoke to me, and then I all went from there. But the only class I ever dropped in college was Business 101 because I thought it had nothing to do with life. I couldn't figure out what it had to do with life. And now I have an entrepreneur that's been able to have their business going and be sustainable for more than 5 years is really successful. Only 34% of people who are entrepreneurs are able to do that. So I'm obviously naturally all of the characteristics, when you look at that, I fall into those categories. But I had that same question. I'm like, where did the term entrepreneur come from? And actually, it came in the late 1600s, a man named Richard Cantillon. He was actually, I think, French, Irish or something. Actually, that was where the word originated, and he said it was an owner or manager of a business enterprise who makes money through risk and initiative. Now, risk and initiative, is that not describing ADHD as well?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, fun fact, who knew, but I was curious as well. So that's where it actually came from.
Oh, wow.
And it's funny how, again, it's that risk and initiative, that was what it was characterized as being. Those are that initiative, that thinking of new things, new ideas, problem solving, coming up with solutions to things, inventions, all of that falls into that category.
And it's funny you said that, you dropped the business course because that didn't interest you. People because I had people who were majors in business at college who were friends, and that just, to me, I'm like, oh, that just sounds boring. I don't want to do business. At the time, I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to save the world. And it's really interesting, though, when you see these people who are like millionaires, some of them are like, stay-at-home moms who solved a problem because she was so frustrated with changing diapers or something like that. And it wasn't somebody who majored in business, who had an MBA. It was someone who had that initiative, had that need, that drive, and came up with this invention. So it's really interesting that you said that too about business, because here I am now as a business person, and people are like, you're an awesome business person. I'm like, I am. That just doesn't make sense because I never thought I had the business mind. But I think I definitely have the entrepreneurial mind.
Yes, you do. And you do, absolutely. And like I said, isn't it funny that in, how many hundreds of years ago in the late 1600s, that actually was the definition of an entrepreneur. Wow. And so it's interesting, we may not be business majors, or that may not be your background. An entrepreneur and that's why I sort of coined that phrase, the entrepreneurial brain style, because it is very, very specific. And we look back and we go, I've always been this way. I've always looked at things with great initiative or new ideas. And it may not have been, and we make money through that. That might be how we support ourselves or how we, provide for ourselves. But it's really about the willingness to take the risk to try something or to do something new, those sorts of things.
Yeah, and it's funny, a lot of us with ADD, I know myself, I have to do things differently because I can't follow that, what everyone else follows. And for me, it's because I can't do things like everyone else. So I have been innovative. I have been inventive. And I think a lot of people with ADD have these great ideas, or they found strategies to manage time, to be organized, or they've, tweaked a tool that somebody else already used. And I think people listening right now, I think a lot of they're probably not even realizing they are entrepreneurs. And even if they're not going to make money by it, the fact that they've saved time and energy can, really help them too.
Or they find a new way to do something that works for them that wasn't the way somebody else did it.
Yes.
That's always so I think we could sort of interchange these two, and I do, is that a lot of people with ADHD, they may not be making their money running their own business, is what we typically think about entrepreneurs, but they certainly are using that entrepreneurial brain style to solve some of the problems, to make things different or do things different. They also tend to be some of the other amazing qualities I found with again, with entrepreneurs, so this might help them go, am I really an entrepreneur? I never realized it. Is actually a natural leader like you were doing, where you were sort of delegating and getting your neighbor to do that. We talked about passion. We talked strong work ethic, love to challenge, curious are also qualities of entrepreneurs. The ability, I love this one, fly by the seat of your pants, where, okay, if something's not working, okay, let me see how I can switch it here. And we may, sometimes we don't necessarily get stuck in that. We sort of just go with the flow sort of thing. What's another one? Oh, enthusiastic, intelligent. I already mentioned out-of-the-box thinker, willing to take risk. Optimism, I think, is another one. And I know when I've talked with people about their entrepreneurial brain style before, they said, I tend to be not necessarily optimistic. I'm like anybody who takes a chance, who starts a business, there's underlying there is this sense of hope and optimism. Now, it may not be that, you're always going around with the glass full, but you definitely there's definitely a part of you that's willing to see that there might be something different, a possibility for something. So it's just really fascinating to me about all those amazing qualities that entrepreneurs have. And and like you said, they may not be traditional business people. In fact, both you and I come from non-traditional entrepreneurial backgrounds, if there's such a term as that. And found ourselves really enjoying this process because it tapped into all these a natural. And this is the thing; these are innate; these are natural talents and qualities that we have. We're just born with them.
No, and I'm sure people are listening right now and probably came on thinking, okay, talking about business, talking about entrepreneur, that's not me, but kind of hearing them. And I think the fact that you and I, who are both successful business people, entrepreneurs, who were like, we're so turned off by the term business. Business, marketing, advertising, 20 years ago, it's like, oh, why would I want to do that?
Well, for me it was a little longer than maybe 30 years.
You do have to learn those skills if you do want to make money and be successful and not go crazy like a lot of us do when we first get involved in business.
Absolutely. And, we started to talk about, unfortunately, there are some things, and it's almost like we're given, and I actually look at entrepreneurs as being a little bit what I call superhuman, because I just read you sort of a list or gave you a little bit of ideas of some of the qualities. There is a little bit of superhuman quality there to do that. I mean, entrepreneurs are not, are not weak people, but oftentimes, and I use this sort of jokingly, there are those kryptonite things, there are too many ideas. There's things that are more boring in our work or mundane details that oftentimes can just sort of drain our energy. And that may be what undermines somebody or prevents them from actually sitting in a job that really is a great fit for them, because they don't address some of these other things or find other ways to do those. We tend to look at them, like you said, when we're little, as there's something wrong with me if I'm an entrepreneur and I can't, and I don't like to sit down and do my books. Well, no, but that's not your strength. You're designed for much bigger things, and I'm not saying that somebody who does your books isn't, but that's not your gift. Your gift and your genius and your brilliance and your superhuman quality is this willingness to take risks and to have these new ideas and to put them into action, those sorts of things. Somebody else probably really enjoys doing the books. And that's who needs to do them. It's not their kryptonite.
Delegating them or finding like a tool that makes it easier for you to do it so you can focus on your strengths and I find that I'm awful at administration. Like, honestly, part of the reason I hadn't done the radio show in a couple months is because I was working by myself, and it was hard to sit down, ask somebody to do it, and go back and forth about when can you record it. And I finally, hired another assistant to help me work, and this person is good at that. And now I can focus on the part that I like is talking to my guests and recording the radio show and coming up with new ideas. And So, and there's also tools where you can schedule appointments and you have to deal with it.
I actually call it, with entrepreneurs, I find, again, we sometimes focus out of what part of the old rules. So I'm supposed to be able to do this. If I'm an entrepreneur, I'm supposed to be able to do my own books or schedule my own show. And the fact is, no, you have an entrepreneurial brain style. Your brain is designed for different things. And so I oftentimes am talking to people about what I call the 3 Ds, which is as you're saying, either is this something that I really need to do? It's something that I need to do, like you and I talking about this, really no one else can show up as Tara McGillicuddy than Tara McGillicuddy. But there's things that you can delegate. A lot of us don't delegate because we think, well, we're supposed to be able to do this, and rather than delegating it. And some things we've been doing because we think we're supposed to be doing them, and really they don't need to be done at all.
No.
So it's called deleting it. So you've actually, that actually is one of the things that I talk a lot with entrepreneurs about are these particular, what I call sort of the 3 Ds, because if we oftentimes hesitate to do that, again, based on some old rule, rather than really stepping into that place where we are honoring that sort of genius that we have and letting somebody else do what they do well.
Oh, yeah, wow. And what were the 3 Ds again? Delegating,
it's either do it.
Okay.
If do it. Like I said, nobody can be you but you, Tara, or, unless they haven't met you, but it's hard.
Then they won't want to be me if they met you.
It's hard to imitate you, I know that.
Yeah.
Nobody's you but you. But you either do it as an entrepreneur, and in fact, a lot of, like you were talking about, sort of people who really, really are successful, they honestly say they do probably only about 20% of their whole business. But it's those pieces where only they can do, like the radio show or like talking one-on-one with clients or meeting with prospective buyers or things like that. Or the other D is delegate it. So like you did, you hired someone to help with schedule your, your radio programs. Or you just delete doing it entirely. It's something that really doesn't need to be done, and there's just some sort of old rule that it's supposed to be. An example of that is for years I did my own scheduling by going back and forth in emails with clients, and I thought that was how I was supposed to do it. And I finally, in the last probably year or so, got an online calendar system, and it has been the biggest blessing for me.
Yep.
So I actually deleted the whole process of going back, and I started a whole new different process that freed me up to do what I really needed, what I really love to do. And I wasn't and that was a really draining activity I was doing, so I completely deleted that and put something else in place.
Wow. No, and I think that's something, whether it's scheduling appointments or just going back and forth, I think a lot of people can relate to those minor phone calls or stupid emails, not for clients, but just the little ones for your business, like canceling something or having doing a customer service call, question about your technology you're using.
Yeah.
And like what you're saying is, okay, you just do it, which maybe you don't want to, or delegate it, or delete it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're doing it as an entrepreneur, it really is something that either only you can do or you absolutely love doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the do it. If it's not, then somebody else gets to do it. Now, you might be an entrepreneur that loves the details of scheduling yourself. I don't know, but those are sort of the rules, and people go, oh my gosh. And actually I struggled with it for a long time because I felt like I felt like there was a fourth D in there. It was actually I was dumping it on somebody, and that really felt uncomfortable for me to dump something on someone. But what I realized is that other people love to do those things. They're really good at that. That's their genius. So I always make sure that whoever I either delegate it to, it is something that they really like to do, and if it's not, then I find someone to do that particular task. I sort of started to adopt this saying that's about, it's not really how to do it. I don't necessarily need to know how to do it. I need to know who can do this, who really loves to do this.
Yeah. And it's really interesting just talking to you right now. I'm like, I'm doing a bunch of things that I'm just doing because they need to be done for the business, and they don't have to be done by me. Maybe it's time for me to reevaluate my systems and see which ones it makes sense to give away to somebody right now and what it makes sense to have somebody else do down the line. But because I get stuck when I have to do, or when things need to be done that I don't enjoy doing.
Well, and we're talking about, the question, of course, is what would that be like for you to know that the majority, 99% of what you're doing really, when we're doing that, that's where we get our juice from, that's where we get inspired from, that's where our energy comes from, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And to be able to give this over to somebody, it's not that we're not doing it. It's not getting done, but we're giving it to somebody that really wants to do it. Maybe they want to do it because they get paid to do it. But some people love the details. They love scheduling.
Yeah. And as I'm listening to this right now, I'm thinking, this can be related to people who aren't even in the business, like a parent who, they can't give all the duties of parenting away to somebody else, but, maybe there's things in your household like cleaning or, getting your child to bed at night. Maybe you hire a babysitter once in a while for that. So I think delegating the 3 Ds can really, other people can relate to it, even if they're not in business or not, the typical entrepreneur. I think anyone who's just living life.
I know, as a parent of 4 kids, you really are sort of the manager and need to be and have a lot of initiative and risk-taking. It's inherent in parenting. And a lot of we sort of started this talk by if you're feeling out of control, you're spinning, you're feeling sort of overwhelmed, a lot of that is because we are taking on things that are not our best brilliance, and we're not looking at the possibilities. Gosh, if I can do what I really love and feel energetic, what does that bring back to the world? And is there somebody else that might be able to do this? And there's obviously we're balancing that with time and money and all that sort of stuff, but sometimes it's worth it to have someone come in and clean once a week. If you can create a new product that saves the world. I mean, really.
Yeah. Or help your children be happy so they can do that later on,
Or you're going to be happy later on because you're not. I remember when my kids were young, I didn't realize, again, I didn't really start thinking about entrepreneurial brain styles until I got older. But I remember when I had a cleaning lady with 4 kids, and anyone listening, there's that moment after they leave that you sort of pause because in 2 minutes it's going to be messy again. But for that 1 minute, it was wonderful. And I also knew when they were making messes, I found myself not getting so upset about it because I knew I wasn't going to have to clean it up to the nth degree. Do you know what I mean? That someone was going to come in and help me with this. There was that sense of this is manageable. I don't have anyone that comes in now. I have a smaller house and most of my kids are gone, but it was huge at that time, and it felt like a huge investment, and it was, but the payoff came out in different ways.
Wow. Yeah. Laurie, we are actually towards the end of today's show. Before we end today, are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave people with again, and also maybe once again give out your contact information?
Yeah. Well, what I want to say to them, again, this talk was sort of about focusing on the entrepreneurial brain style and minimizing somehow really that spinning and the challenges. And what I really want people who, wherever your entrepreneurial qualities are showing up in your life, if you're owning a business or running a family, is to really honor what you do well and appreciate that, because these are innate gifts and talents that you have, and consider other ways that things can get done, not only for your benefit, but everybody, for other people's as well. The other thing is we didn't talk about, but I do want to throw out, is that whatever you do, and this sort of comes out because most entrepreneurs are obviously passionate about whatever it is that they do. And again, sometimes that could be a mom. She's passionate about what she does and she's running her family, or dad, or whatever that is. But it's so important that you're very clear about what that passion is, and because that's where your motivation comes from. I actually call it, rather than that shiny object thing that a lot of people say is very distracting for people with ADHD, entrepreneurs have that too because we're noticing new ideas and new possibilities all the time. I actually say that we need to be very clear about what I call your disco ball. It needs to be the brightest, shiniest thing, and you need to just take a moment to go, what is it that keeps me going? Because if we can get clear on that, the rest of it falls away. That helps us with the procrastination. That helps us with the time management. It helps us with, okay, do I want to do this idea, or is there something else that's going to take me and keep me focused and get me towards that, disco ball, as I call it. Because there's going to be shiny objects. We are designed as entrepreneurs, and also ADHD, or entrepreneurial brain style and ADHD brain style, to notice those things. It's what makes us successful. But we need something brighter and big, and be really clear about that to keep our direction going where we want it to go.
Wow. I love the term disco ball. That's great.
Yeah. So, and like you said, I want to make sure that if anyone wants to know more about that, you can absolutely reach me at my website at www.coachingforadhd.com, and that's all spelled out, or email me at Laurie, Laurie, at coachingforadhd.com.